Hi, it's October 2nd, 2019. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska, and I've been working on this police belt. It's a duty belt, equipment belt, whatever title. Different people call it different things, but basically, this is the belt that uniform law enforcement wear. And for people who don't know, a lot of police they'll have a trouser belt on. Uh, that goes through their belt loops, and then the actual belt that holds like the handcuff case, their gun holster, magazine pouch, and everything like that, that goes around their trouser belt, and then it's held on with these keepers here. These belts are typically, the standard measurement is 2.25 inches wide, and also depending on the agency, their policy and procedure usually dictates what kind of belt that the officers or state troopers or whoever are allowed to wear. Some of them have to be like a smooth finish leather. Some of them have to be Basketweave, like this. Some of them have to have a polished leather. Some of them are to be nylon. It just depends. But this one needs to be basket stamped. So that's why I put the Basketweave on here, and I'll show you how I did that. And I utilized the method that I saw on Gonzales's YouTube channel. Up to that point, I was having a lot of difficulty with my Basketweave style stamping. I'd always go crooked and everything, but he put out a video of how to do it properly, and I just copied that method, and it worked perfect for this belt. This belt is made out of 8 to 9 ounce Wickett and Craig bridle leather. This is the first time I've ever made a large project out of bridle leather, and it is really nice to work with. It's got kind of a little bit of a waxy feel to it. It cuts nice, it burnishes nice, and I got a whole side of it for $150 from Wickett and Craig off their sales flyer that they put out every month. For the inside, the lining, I used the double shoulders that I showed in a couple videos ago. I cut a strip off of it and cut it down to 3 to 4 ounce on my splitter. And then I used some olive oil to finish the lining there. And then I also used Phoebe's acrylic Resolene on both the inside and outside of the belt in order to seal it all up. As you can see, the leather's still a little stiff because it's brand new. But this is just a Safariland standard magazine pouch for these can hold the magazines for either a Glock 17 9mm or a Glock 22 40 caliber Smith & Wesson. But all the measurements for police equipment, like I said, is that standard 2.25 inches wide. So we're able to just, at that measurement, fit all the different pieces of the belt onto it. This goes for the holsters, flashlight holders, handcuff case pouch, taser holsters, tourniquet holders, all of it. They all are designed to fit on this width of a belt. Okay, this is the Sam Brown buckle that I got from the Springfield leather company. I think this thing was just a few dollars. It's made in Taiwan. The quality isn't as nice as some of the pieces that I've received from like Weaver Leather, but I couldn't find one of these buckles through them. So if anybody knows a better source for this type of a buckle that's a little more high quality, feel free to let me know. This is the Wickett and Craig 8 to 9 ounce bridle leather in black that I received, and I've already cut this side of leather up into more usable pieces, and this would be the center portion of the side that I measured out to around 60 inches so I can strap off straps. And now I have my strap cutter, and I'm just going to cut off a strap that's the 2.25 inches wide. And then I'm also going to cut off a piece of the natural tooling leather from a side, here it is, of the same width, and I'm going to use that to line the inside of the belt. This piece here is 8 to 9 ounces also, so I'm going to have to run it through the splitter and take it down to 3 to 4 ounces. Now here are the two straps side by side. Just double checking to make sure they're approximately the same width. And now I'm going to use the Cobra Class 14 leather splitter to go ahead and take it down, the lining piece, like I said, to 3 to 4 ounces. Now here's part of the pattern I made out of poster board. If you're wondering where I got this, I took an old law enforcement belt that I had that had long since been retired, and I reverse engineered it. I cut it open and measured out the pieces, and that's where I got my measurements to make these little pieces out of poster board. And then I just have an end piece and a front end piece there that I can just put on the ends of the strap and then just adjust the width of the belt, or correction, the length of the belt accordingly. So I just measured out the tip there. I'm going to cut out the front, and then I'm going to come over to the back side, and I'm going to use my strap cutter to make the cuts on the ends here. This is a method I learned off of Weaver Leather's YouTube channel with Chuck Dorset, and utilizing this method keeps the pieces, the little wings there, nice and even, and then I can come back here with my knife and cut them out. What I'm doing here is I'm using my bench skiver to take down the end where the buckle hook is going to be located. I'm going to skive it down to approximately half the thickness of the 8 to 9 ounce. So I'm taking it probably down to 4 ounces approximately here. And this is a craft tool bench skiver from Tandy leather, and it works pretty well for this type of application. What I'm doing here is, this is the end piece that goes behind the little hooks and kind of backs the portion that hooks onto the belt buckle. And what I'm doing here is I cut out the main piece, and now I'm just cutting out a backing piece for that little piece I just cut out, and I'm going to glue this to the back of it for the liner. And I'm taking this down to probably about 2 ounces. And there you can see the piece I cut out, and then there's the lining piece that I just ran through the splitter, and I'll just glue those two pieces together. Now I've glued them together. I'm going to put a stitch groove through there, and now I'll run them through the sewing machine. I'm going to use the same size thread through this entire project. It's black nylon 207 thread, and the sewing machine I'm using is a Cobra Class 3 from the Leather Machine Company. Same company that makes the splitter. Alright, this is a comparison. On the left is not wet, on the right it is wet, where I wetted the leather down and put some stamps in. And there's a distinct difference. It does stamp better when it's wet. I didn't think the bridle leather would accept the moisture as well, just because of the coating it comes from the tannery on it, but it does make a difference. So I got the belt good and wet, and I'm just going to put my maker's mark here on the very tip of the belt. And then I'm going to proceed to use the system that I mentioned earlier that Don Gonzales showed on his YouTube channel of how to do basket weave. I'm just putting a borderline line with my scratch all there around the edge, and now I have it set up to go down the center of the belt, and I'm just going to scribe a line all the way down the center. And this is going to be my reference point for the rest of the basket weave stamps all the way out to the end. I'm going to start down the middle and work my way out on both sides. So now I've got my piece of granite here on the table, and I do not own a maul, so I'm just using my little plastic hammer there. It's a 16-ounce hammer that costs like $5 from the hardware store. And I just stamp each basket weave in individually. This is a cheap craft tool, $2.99 basket weave stamp from Tandy leather. If I continue to do this type of work, I would definitely invest in a better stamp, probably a Clay Miller or a Barry King basket weave stamp. And here I am putting the remaining layers. I've slowly worked my way out, and then on the very edge I'm going to, of the border, will come the camouflaging tool, which it looks like kind of like a seashell, and I have the smallest Craft Tool Pro stamp that they offer that I'm using. There's 6 rows of basket weave going across this belt, and the small little camouflage tool worked perfect for getting the last little layer of stamping around the border here. I'm putting it right up against that borderline line that I scribed at the very beginning. And I'm going to continue all the way around the perimeter of the belt with this camouflage tool. I don't know how well you can see that since it's black. Now that I've got all those little camouflage stamps in, I'm going to go around with a Craft Tool stitch groover, and I'm cutting in my lines that I'm going to use to follow with the sewing machine. This is just a cheap Craft Tool stitch groover. I think it costs like $8 from Tandy Leather, and it works just fine for my... Try to give you an idea of what the belt kind of looks like. Now I need to finish the portion that's going to wrap around the hooks for the belt, because I'm not going to have a whole lot of access to this area once it's stitched together. So I'm going to go ahead and sand it down with 220, 400 wet sand. Then I'm going to go back over it with a canvas cloth, and I'll just rub down the edges with the handle of a leather tool. An edge beveler is what it is. And then I'll just take some of this Angelus black leather dye the edges that are exposed, as well as this portion here that was skied, because I don't want any of this tan color showing on the belt once it's put together. And then I'll do the same thing for the little backing piece here. The leather gloves that I invested, those are just a box of Harbor Freight leather gloves, and they're worth their weight in gold. Now I'm just taking some two-sided adhesive tape that I got from Maker's Leather Supply to temporarily hold down this piece here. Now keep take note of what I'm about to do here. I am about to put the hooks in, and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing, and I'm going to pay for it later, you'll see. But I'm putting them in backwards. They need to be facing the other direction. Now I'm just going to stitch the hooks in place where I folded that piece of leather over. I'm just going to make a little square around that little flap. I'm just lining up my last stitch there. And then I will punch a hole on the end, kind of where the foot of the sewing machine is there. On the other side of it, I'll punch a hole for the stud that's going to hold the belt when it's being worn by the user. Just going to punch this hole here. And then the stud here is basically a rivet with a post that sticks up. Making sure the hole is big enough for the post. I stuck the rivet through, just give it a little tap to get it started. I got it set over the top of my railroad track anvil. And then I'm just going to tap it into place. Now I'm going to put olive oil on the lining piece. It's going to take a couple coats because, as you'll be able to see here, it's kind of splotchy with just one coat. But it turns out a nice tan color, and it looks nice for the lining piece. I wish I put a coat of Resolene over the top of it right now, because I'll end up getting some water on it later, and it's going to leave a little watermark that I'm not going to be able to get out. Now I have a craft tool. This is a tool that they have that helps scratch up the backside of your leather, so your glue takes the adhesions a little stronger. And I've roughed up the entire backside of this piece here, and I'm going to cover the entire thing with this barge contact cement as well as the lining piece. Once again, the cheap rubber gloves are worth their weight in gold, whether you're putting dye on, using paint, or contact cement, because it just, once you're done, you just take them off, throw them away, and then you're not rolling contact adhesive off your fingers for the rest of the day. Now I apologize, I got out of frame here a little bit, so it's kind of tough to see, but I'm just using one hand to kind of hold the sides in place while I kind of push down with my other hand. And now it's kind of tacked into place, so I'm just going to press it down and then just push on it with my thumbs. Since I've tooled this piece, I really don't want to tap over the top of it with a hammer, because I don't want to risk messing up my tooling. You know, all know how much I love to tool leather, and I really don't want to mess this up. Now I'm just cutting off the excess bit of the liner from the tip. And I'll head over to the sewing machine and get this thing stitched into place. I'm starting on the corner here, and I'm just going from one stitch groove to the next. Just lifting the foot there, getting the needle right where I need it before it gets all the way to the bottom dead center, and then drop it into place, drop the foot, and continue on sewing. Now I'm in my groove, and I'm just going to continue down one side. Actually, I'm just going to go make an entire lap all the way around the perimeter of the belt. This does take a while. I have this sped up just a little bit, but the machine's actually running a lot slower because I want each stitch to go exactly where I need it, and I'm not talented enough with a sewing machine yet to be able to just flat foot it and go, 100 miles an hour. There's some people that can do it, and it's pretty cool, but I'm not one of them. I'm getting towards the end here. I'm just going to roll over maybe 3 or 4 stitches, lock it into place, burn off the edges, and that portion of the stitching is complete. Now I'm going to head out to the garage once again and hit the belt sander. I got the sides lined up pretty well, so they just need to barely be touched with the belt sander, but it does leave those little ears that kind of stick up from the leather after it went over. So I'm going to take a craft tool fine edge beveler and take those little ears off, and I'm not going to be putting running the bigger edge bevelers down the ends of this, because I want the sides to be as thick as possible, because I want them to be able to hold the equipment in place as well as they possibly can, and I don't want a round edge to possibly compromise that. Now I've already hit this whole thing with 220, and now I'm going to go back over and wet sand the whole thing with 400, which is what I'm doing here. Now that's complete, and I'm just taking the handle of this edge beveler, and I'm going to get an initial burnish on the edges of this belt, and then I'll go back over with a canvas cloth and get everything slicked up. Now I'm back over at my piece of tempered glass that I used to do dyeing and painting on, and I'm going to run this Angelus black leather dye down all the edges of this belt and get them ready to be set up for final assembly. I'll also run an edge of black edge paint over the top of the leather dye. I want to kind of experiment and see how well this edge paint holds up to a belt that's being used with equipment coming on and off of it constantly. And here's the Resin. I wish I did this initially when I was putting the olive oil on. That would have prevented the water spot that I ended up getting on it. But anyway, I'm going to put a coat of the Resin just with a paper towel on the lining and on the main body of the front side of the belt. Now I'm getting ready for the final assembly. I'm going to put that backing piece that goes behind the hooks here on. I stuck it on initially with the tape, and now I'm just going over with the sewing machine and get it permanently stitched in place, which I'm going to have to undo here at the end of the video because those hooks are not pointing in the right direction. Now I'm going to be punching the holes. I'm going to punch the buttonholes and the holes for the tongues or forks or whatever they're called for the main buckle. This is measured out. Like I said, I made the mistake of measuring this out for this old belt and this old buckle, and I didn't double check. And I'm going to realize here that these holes that I'm punching here are going to be a little too far out. They need to be a little narrower for this buckle that I got from Springfield leather, so I'm not going to be able to use it. I'm going to have to use the old buckle from the old belt, which will work just fine. And there I just realized that the holes are not lined up correctly. And now I'm trying to put the belt together, and I'm realizing for the first time that I put those hooks in upside down. There, I just realized what I did. And now I have to fix it. Here I am popping the stitches, pulling the hooks out, and turning it over. I'll end up stitching that piece back down. Before I end up doing that, here I am pulling all the little pieces of thread out from the first line of stitching. And now I'm going back over my old holes the machine's really good. It just punches right back in the same holes that I made originally. I'm getting that all stitched back together. And I end up being able to save this project. That's not always the case when you make a mistake, but I think it's important to show in this video that mistakes happen, and that's what you learn from, and I'll hopefully never repeat that mistake ever again. The keeper I just pulled that off the old belt for demonstration purposes here. I'll make one later, but you've seen me make keepers before. But here's a finished belt. Turned out pretty good overall, and maybe hopefully I'll be able to get an embossing machine to make the Basketweave stamp or basket stamping go a little quicker. Thanks for watching. This is Andrew in Omaha, Nebraska. Have a nice day.